The world was shocked when Ozzy Osbourne died suddenly. Following this, Iommi finally spoke out, and fans are shocked by what he said. If you ask Iommi, she says that Ozzy was different that night. He couldn't quite explain it until it was too late. What did he see? And did Ozzy already know how to say goodbye? You won't be able to say anything about the truth behind their last moments. No one saw that goodbye coming. The world woke up to terrible news on July 22, 2025. He was 76 years old. Ozzy Osbourne was the Prince of Darkness and the famous lead singer of Black Sabbath. People in the music world and beyond were shocked by the news. Fans, artists, and news outlets around the world had a hard time dealing with the death of a man whose voice, wild energy, and dark charm helped define heavy metal for more than 50 years. Ozzy had performed his last show just a few weeks before under the bright lights of Birmingham's Villa Park Stadium. Even though he had Parkinson's disease and had several surgeries on his spine, he was able to give a haunting and emotional performance while sitting on a handmade leather throne. Nobody in the room or on stage thought this would be his last goodbye. Ozzy's death wasn't the slow fall that many people were expecting. Reports said that his health had improved since his last show, and he was even said to be planning to go back to the studio for one last song. But Ozzy is said to have died peacefully in his sleep at his home in Buckinghamshire, just one day after going to a private dinner with his friends. His kids and wife Sharon Osbourne were with him. It's hard to think that Ozzy is gone. He was alive, electric, and in charge of the stage at Villa Park just a few days before he died. In Aston, Birmingham on July 5, 2025, an important event took place when the original members of Black Sabbath got back together for what would be their last show together. It wasn't just another show that was called Back to the Beginning. It was a strong tribute to the city where it all began. It was also the last show for one of the most important bands in music history. Ozzy Osbourne, who has Parkinson's disease and was in the later stages of the disease, made an entry that left fans gasping for air. He was sitting on a custom-made leather chair with wings that was in the middle of a simple stage that matched Black Sabbath's dark and haunting style. Even though he looked weak, Ozzy's heart was anything but weak. At that moment, he gave it everything he had, and his voice was filled with longing, honesty, and thanks. A stadium in Birmingham that was open to the air was packed with more than 45,000 people, and 5.8 million more watched online via a live stream. It turned out to be one of the most watched live music events of the decade. Some fans came from other countries just to be a part of this farewell. Many people knew they might never see the band play again, since Ozzy's health has been getting worse over the years. The night was even bigger because it had a legendary cast of supporting acts. Rock bands like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Slayer, Tool, and Pantera. Each band went on stage not only to play, but also to honor the metal pioneers. Several musicians talked about how Ozzy and Black Sabbath had influenced their own lives between songs. The stadium was filled with an electric energy that was both happy and sad. Behind the scenes, the event was just as important as it was huge. It was said that Ozzy made it clear that this show was very important to him. He insisted on singing one last time for the fans and friends who had been with him for over 50 years. Even though the doctor was worried, close friends and family say he told them he would rather sing on the street in Birmingham than watch from a hospital bed. The event was also a good thing. About $140 million was raised through ticket sales, merchandise sales, and gifts made through global streaming. Because the band is from a working-class background and cares about their city, the money was given to cure Parkinson's, a charity close to Ozzy's heart, in Birmingham Children's Hospital. As the last sounds of Paranoid played in the stadium, the lights went out, and everyone stood still. Ozzy put up a shaking hand, and tears were welling up in his eyes. Geyser, Butler, Tony, Iommi, and Bill Ward all stood next to him and were moved. In the same way, there were no fireworks or flashy effects, just raw music, brothers who had known each other for a long time, and people who knew this wasn't just a show. It was history. Back to the Beginning was more than just a phrase that night. In a way, it was a tribute, a goodbye, and the last roar of heavy metal's first kings. People from all over the world sent memories after he died. Metal Gear, Elton John, Slash, and even Coldplay remembered Ozzy and sent their sympathies. They called her one of the best performers ever, to honor the life of a working-class boy who became a global icon. Black Sabbath fans lit candles outside of his old studio and met at his childhood home in Aston, Birmingham. As honors came in from all over the world, they all pointed to Tony. Iommi, fans of Brother in Arms, were waiting to hear from most of them. To talk about Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi finally does so. The world learned of Ozzy Osbourne's death at age 76 on July 23, 2025, that same day. His longtime friend and Black Sabbath bandmate Tony Iommi finally spoke out. In an interview with ITV News, Iommi said that the loss was unbelievable and that it didn't hit him until he woke up the next morning. "It hit me like a ton of bricks when I woke up." He said the pain wasn't just going through the loss of a bandmate. It was about losing someone who had been there for him through decades of ups and downs, chaos and order, fame and shame. Said that Ozzy had said in the weeks before he died that he really wanted to do one last show in Birmingham, which is where they grew up. He wanted to stand in front of the crowd one last time, but not for a big show. He wanted to do something sincere and easy. Iommi says Ozzy wanted it to be a proper farewell and a way to thank the fans who had been there for him for over 50 years. Tony's voice broke with emotion as he said he wanted to go out doing what he loved and where it all began. Unfortunately, Ozzy's health did not allow for that last show to happen, but the idea itself will live on in the minds of those close to him. In the same memorial, Tony talked about his last days with Ozzy and how he had quietly said goodbye to both the band and the fans. "I really can't find the words to describe how sad the news is. He is unique and will never be replaced." Tony said, "Geezer Bill and I have lost our brother." The weight of his words could only be felt by someone who knew Ozzy personally. It wasn't about the crazy things that happened on stage, the scary news stories, or the reality show. It was about a man who had fought his problems and still inspired a lot of people. Fans all over the world were moved by Iommi's touching homage. There were a lot of condolences, old pictures, and emotional messages on social media. Radio stations played old Sabbath songs over and over again. People from all walks of life, including Metallica's James Hetfield and pop star Elton John, joined the chorus of sadness. It was clear that Ozzy wasn't just a heavy metal hero. He was a cultural hero who was loved by people of all ages and musical styles. Iommi's words were heavy with sadness because their relationship was never easy or short. Brothers and singing went together for a long time. Let's go back to the beginning. How Ozzy and Tony met for the first time and how it changed their lives. Friends before fame. The world knew Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne as heavy metal heroes before that. They were just two boys navigating the rough streets of Birmingham, England. They didn't start out on stage or in a studio. The first places it happened were at Burfield Road School, where they were both students in the early 1960s. At that time, business was what made Birmingham what it was. Factory stacks let out a lot of smoke. The air smelled like machines and metal. It was thought that most boys would work in factories instead of being on stage. It was hard, but life was also honest and plain. It meant that kids like Tony and Ozzy had to grow up with parents who worked hard and didn't have a lot of extras. The person known as Ozzy was born John Michael Osbourne. He was the fourth of 6 children living in a crowded house in Aston, neighborhood of Birmingham. People often called him the class clown because he liked to make people laugh and get into trouble. Reading and writing were the hardest things for him in school, but he made up for it with his attitude. Ozzy often talks about how hearing the Beatles' "She Loves You" as a teen changed his life. Even though he didn't know it at the time, it helped him find his way. Tony Iommi, on the other hand, was more serious and quiet. He was serious and mostly kept to himself. He was also raised in Aston. He liked music since he was young, but he had no idea how it would affect his life. Ozzy let everyone know he was there with jokes and fooling around, but Tony seemed more shy and preferred to watch than talk. Even though they were different, there was something that made them click. They knew each other at school, but weren't close friends right away. The harsh teachers, tight rules, and the bleak future of factory life were what brought them together in the end. Both of them had seen what life was like if they did what everyone else did. and they both wanted more in a deep way. They lived on different streets, and even after school, they kept running into each other. It began as a casual acquaintance that grew into a deep relationship. Tony would think back on those school days years later and remember how Ozzy's energy stood out even back then. It wasn't often that rock stars were born in Aston, but these two boys had the spark of something different. It began as a friendship in the schoolyard, with smoky skies and hopes too big for Birmingham. That was before the fame and the music. Let me now tell you about how these two good friends from Birmingham's smoky streets rose from nothing to rule the music world and become rock history heroes. From Black Sabbath to now, Black Sabbath led a musical movement in the heart of Birmingham in the early 1970s. Tony Iommi's deep, knob-riff-driven guitar work and Ozzy Osbourne's haunting, expressive singing gave the band's sound a unique edge. They showed the world a darker, heavier side of rock music. At first, it was hard for reviewers to describe what they were hearing, but fans loved it right away. It wasn't just a new band they were seeing. It was the start of a whole new style, called heavy metal. When Black Sabbath's self-titled debut record came out in 1970, it opened with the eerie sound of church bells and thunder, setting them apart from other bands of the time. The rough, gloomy sound of the record captured the fear and uncertainty of the life they knew so well as working-class people. The lyrics were about war, paranoia, and the supernatural, and they hit home with a generation that was going through a lot of social and political change. When they came out with Paranoid a few months later, it was their big break. They became famous all over the world thanks to hits like Iron Man, War Pigs, and Paranoid. It went to the top of the charts in both the US and the UK, showing that their sound was popular around the world. Fans liked how strong, intense, and honest the band was. When Ozzy's sharp, emotional voice was mixed with Iommi's warped, heavy guitar tone, it made something that had never been heard before. Those early records did not just happen to be hits. During the decade, Black Sabbath put out a number of important albums, such as Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. Each record kept breaking new ground. Iommi's guitar playing got more creative, and he often used more than one track at a time. The songs talked about things like mental health, addiction, and the bad side of fame. Even though Iommi and Osbourne were both having problems in their personal lives and tensions were rising within the group, their relationship stayed strong. In an interview, Iommi said, "What we created together was bigger than any one of us." This quote shows how successful they were as artists and how they felt about each other without saying it. During the 1970s, Black Sabbath played 2 packed houses in Europe, North America, and other places. They got fans from all different generations to stick with them. Their impact spread through the music world and gave rise to bands like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Slayer, who would later say that Sabbath created metal. Today, Black Sabbath had sold more than 75 million records around the world by the end of the decade. Their music was no longer just from Birmingham. They were famous all over the world and changed what rock music could be. There were also hard times that put their friendship to the test. Let's look at how they dealt with these problems and kept the friendship that began before they found fame. Faces and reunions. Black Sabbath's path was never easy. By 1979, personal problems and disagreements had hit a breaking point. 4. Ozzy Osbourne in particular. It was hard for the band to work because Ozzy became more and more dependent on alcohol and other drugs over the years of intense touring and pressure from the music business. After many failed attempts to stay together, the band's remaining members, led by Tony Iommi, made the tough choice to split up with their longtime lead singer. The breakup marked the end of an era. In the end, Ozzy said that being fired from Black Sabbath was the worst thing that ever happened to him, but it was also the start of his journey by himself. At the same time, Iommi took it upon himself to protect the name of the Sabbath. He tried out different singers and band lineups over the next 20 years. Even though singers like Ronnie James Dio, Ian Gillan, and Tony Martin added their own styles to the band, it was always missing the band's original unity. Even though the music was still strong, both fans and reviewers often wished that the original lineup would come back. Behind the scenes, Iommi and Ozzy's friendship never really went away. It took time for old scars to heal, and as the men got older, they looked back on their younger years with nostalgia and respect. Their past together, which began with being friends in school and discovering music together, was too deep for even the worst trials to undo. In 2013, the long-awaited get-together finally took place. Ozzy Osbourne and Geezer Butler, the original three-piece, got back together to make a new studio record called 13. The record did well at the stores. It debuted at #1 in several countries and was praised for bringing back the raw energy of their early work. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a new start. As soon as the record came out, the band went on a huge world tour. Even though drummer Bill Ward didn't go on tour because they didn't agree, the return was still seen as a success. Fans all over the world were thrilled to see Iommi and Ozzy back on stage together. When Ozzy died, it was the end of an era in music. But Iommi thinks that his influence will live on forever. Check out Iommi's thoughts on Ozzy's ongoing effect on the rock and metal world. From Iommi's point of view, it wasn't just the end of a musical phase for Tony Iommi when she lost Ozzy Osbourne. He had lost a brother, a friend, and someone who had been in his life all the time for more than 50 years. In the days after Ozzy's death in July 2025, Iommi's words showed how sad millions of people around the world were. After years of being together on stage, backstage, in workshops, and on the road, he just said, "There's never going to be another Ozzy." It was a goodbye, not only to a member of the band, but also to a person whose spirit helped shape rock music itself. Iommi thought Ozzy knew it would be his last bow. Iommi said that he gave everything he had and then quietly left. That action showed not only how much Ozzy loved music, but also how determined he was to end his journey with his bandmates and fans, right where it all started. Iommi didn't talk about awards or record sales when she thought about Ozzy's impact. Rather, he talked about times when they laughed together and got through hard times together. He said with some thought, "God, we go back so many years. There was one Ozzy and that was it. Iommi couldn't live without Ozzy, both for his voice and the crazy magic he brought into every room he entered." There are many people who remember Ozzy in the music world. He changed how heavy metal could sound and feel by being the crazy lead singer. His voice, which was rough, emotional, and easy to recognize, became Black Sabbath's soul rock stars. Like Metallica and Elton John and young fans who are just now hearing Paranoid for the first time, all talk about how much of an impact Ozzy has had on the music world. For Iommi, that heritage is close to home. It lives on in more ways than just the albums and shows. It lives in the bond they made in the Birmingham factories and streets. Iommi thinks that Ozzy's ideas will live on forever, even though he is no longer alive. It will roar through the speakers of every fan who turns it up all the way. What do you think about the strong link between Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne? Drop your ideas in the box below.